welcome. Super excited to have with us today Jhana K. Porter with Frakktal. Frakktal is a materials company developing plant-based polymer processes for the replacement of fossil fuel-based feedstocks, beginning with PVC. Excited to have you here.
Excited to be here.
Tell us about Frakktal.
Frakktal, we're based in Houston. I'm from Houston. We are developing, as you mentioned, bio-based polymers, so biopolymers, and our raw materials are plant material that are typically sent to landfills or other waste streams.
Yeah. And you're from Houston?
I am from
Born
Houston.
And raised? OG?
Almost OG. I was born in New Orleans, which is sort of equivalent. Moved here when I was about 2. And been here my whole life.
Nice.
Yeah.
Tell us about how you got into this space. You have a great story that I love on so many levels.
Sure. So I am a yogi, or someone who practices yoga faithfully 5 to 6 times a week for about, 13 years, something like that. And when I was in the Bay Area, this was 2019-ish, end of 2019, I was in hot yoga class and we were waiting for it to begin. So everybody's in there setting up. I'm in the back. A man comes and sets up beside me, unrolls his mat, brand new mat, and it starts to off gas immediately, right? And so it's strong. I'm smelling it. And really for the next 90 minutes, I'm thinking about what the mat is going to do to him, right? How it's going to interact with his skin, his face, his feet, because, he's just in shorts, right? So it's all of that. And then because it is I don't want to say cheap, but cheap, right? It wasn't meant to last forever. Mat, it's going to degrade and he's going to throw it away. What's going to happen to it then, right? So instead of really meditating, I'm thinking about that. So I guess I was meditating, but not meditating on me, right? So I was thinking about that. And so as a chemist, what can I do? Who do I need to talk to? And so for the next maybe 6 months, just kind of let it bounce around in my head. Nothing serious, just let's make some better athletic equipment, right? And it was really a me problem, right? I wanted to help my yogi community, right? And then when I went out looking for guidance, people were like, this is a bigger thing, I think, than you realize. And if you are, willing to do this, here are some things that you should do, right? And people pointed me toward grant money and things like that, as opposed to just sort of keeping it really small. So I guess I just didn't think about it as a company. Then I was laid off. It was COVID, right? So the next May, 6 months later, laid off, and I was like, let's start a business, right? I moved back home, Houston's home. And then during COVID, started my business. And so 2.5 years of us just grinding it out, really. And we'll be 3 years in a few months.
Yeah. Tell me about that moment when it went from project to company. Like, were you sitting at home and you said it's time to make money at this? Or was there a transformation in your mind?
Honestly, I've always been comfortable with risk, I think. And so when I was laid off, I think there was a switch in my mind that was like, you were ready anyway. So here's a perfect opportunity, right, for you to move into something else. You don't have any excuses now, right? And I was fortunate that I still had a homestead in Houston, so I can just come home and just work on it. I just kind of put my head down and started working on it.
So first of all, I love the idea of a climate tech yogi, right? I feel like there's so much to delve into there.
Sure.
Like, go back, your original story, you're in yoga.
Yeah.
And you said you could tell somebody's mat is off gassing.
Yes.
So one, you're a chemist. You've got some background that I want to learn. What does that mean?
Yeah.
And is that something that I should be worried about in yoga? Like, what is coming out of our yoga mats?
Yes. Well, I think yes.
I think of yoga as like detoxing. Am I also retoxing at the same time?
Absolutely. So I think one of the things maybe that we don't think about are what the materials are used in any of the things that we interact with, right? And so I'm sure a lot of people have heard of the conversation about PFAS, right? It's very similar to that, where we're building these things and we interact with them on a daily. They break down because that's what things do. And in the case with the yoga mat, it's off-gassing, meaning, the materials that are made with, there are things that are going on that are not complete right? And so it's releasing these gases, right? And it's in this 105-degree room, right? That doesn't help, right? And so, and I was right next to him. So I was just getting big whiffs of it for an hour and a half. But to answer your question, you should be concerned, right? I think we've been taught otherwise. So like when you have a new car and you smell that, we've been conditioned to think that's a good thing. Is that a good thing that you're smelling formaldehyde in your car? Not necessarily, right? But yeah.
So when these materials off gas, you said it some is because the process is incomplete. And that is a telltale sign of something that is cheaply constructed.
I don't necessarily want to say that it's just because it's cheaply constructed. It just, in that instance, I could tell that the mat was a cheaply constructed, or I shouldn't say cheaply constructed, the material was not meant to last, right? And so you've seen the mats, right? They're just very, very thin, right? And but on the other end of that, there are mats that are like in gyms, right? That are, maybe a few inches thick. Those are built to last, right? And that was just the case there. The off-gassing isn't necessarily because it's inexpensive or cheap. It's just because the materials or the compounds that they choose to make the materials with, right?
I also like that one of the things we always ask about is, what's your climate story? And you're a Houstonian, you lived in New Orleans, but your climate story started in yoga in San Francisco.
Yes. Yes.
And that is like, it doesn't matter how you get there. Everybody has their own unique story.
Sure.
And also what I really like is we do take for granted the normal everyday things that, as a Houstonian, when I think climate, I think resilience, and I think all of the things that have happened to us. And then I think energy and oil and gas.
Absolutely.
And the things that like are in your face.
Yeah.
It is really easy to discount and forget that every article of clothing I'm wearing has a carbon imprint and is probably made for some type of hydrocarbon. And all of the chains and my single-use plastic that my New Year's resolution was to not do. And I was doing really well until I am running late. And then
that's when
happen,
it is. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And so I like that story, and I really like what you are doing because you help get to carpet. Carpet is something in your house that you have pretty much no control over. My apartment, I have no control over.
Right.
Maybe you can go through and replace everything.
Yeah.
But if you do it right the first time. Yeah.
Right. And not just carpet. So PVC or polyvinyl chloride is really made for the built environment. 70% of the PVC that's made is for the built environment. So it's flooring materials like carpet, luxury vinyl tile, things like that. But it's also siding, roofing, cabling, water transportation, so plumbing systems, windows, doors. So really anything in a space has a large PVC component.
And so how did you go from yoga mat? Or yoga mat's made of PVC? Take us on this chain.
It's a wild ride. So that yoga mat, I'm not sure what it was made of, probably polypropylene, polyethylene, something like that. The first 6 months, which was just the research and talking to people, I decided the best material to make would be a thermoplastic elastomer. In sort of layman's terms, that just means there is a rigid element and then a flexible element, and you put them together and you get the best of both worlds, right? And so went down that path for a while. And again, it's COVID, right? So the need to like go into places and do testing and prototyping was slowed down quite a bit, right? Because people that didn't know you are not necessarily going to let you into those spaces. So it was a lot of webinars and meeting people through Zoom and trying to do as much as possible. And then we sort of decided to move away from athletics to automotive, like interiors, right? So like molding or like a dashboard or interior molding or molding by the tire, the front, things like that, things that have a little bit of give but still need rigidity. And then just realize automotive for a brand new startup is a very difficult mountain to climb, right? Because I'm not sure how familiar you are with automotive, but in terms of sourcing, there are tiers, right? There's OEM, right? And then there's all the tiers underneath that. And then the margins for all of those sort of decrease as you go down the list. And then not to mention that everybody there has been doing it forever, right? And so they don't really want to bring in somebody that's brand new, or if they do, it's just kind of going to get spread across the 3,000 suppliers that they already have. And nothing against automotive, but it just didn't make sense for us to start there. And that was also sort of an epiphany. We went at that for a while, and then just in an accelerator realized through some talks with mentors that it wasn't working, and then decided based on customer discovery that we had already done, it should be the built environment. And it should have probably always been the built environment. So we went back to that. So we made this hard left or U-turn, and started focusing on what in the built environment could be changed or addressed first. And PVC was just a glaring example, right? It's degrades into microplastics. It disrupts the human endocrine system. It's everywhere, right? So why not start there? So yeah.
And you went to an accelerator that was not in Houston.
I went to a couple of accelerators.
Oh, you went to a couple.
Not in Houston. Yeah.
And I assume you had to pick up your life to go off and do that, which is a big commitment. But where did you end up going, and why?
I did. Half of last year I did not live in Houston. So I went to the University of Tennessee. He has a Spark Clean Tech Accelerator in Knoxville. So I did that. And that is where we initially pivoted. So June of last year is where we sort of had that epiphany and pivoted. And then after that, went to a generator accelerator. This is where we got our first dilutive funding, first and only. And that was in Huntsville with the Hudson Alpha Ad Tech Accelerator.
And then you, if I recall, you're also working with the lab. Is that the one in Huntsville?
The lab for a pilot run?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the pilot run is at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, yeah.
So part of this is also you're partnering with a lot of people all over the country, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. It's, I think when I started, I was very optimistic that all of those resources would be local and I would be able to, and I tried to sort of match those things up. And then after a while banging my head against the wall, realized I should open that field up, and then found that there were resources and I could always come back here. I built it in Houston because I wanted it to be in Houston, and that I could bring those things here, even the learnings that I, got from other places, bring that back here and then build it here.
So where is your company today? What are you most excited about? What's kind of on your radar?
Yeah. I'm excited about the pilot run that you brought up, Jason. That is next week.
Oh, wow. Imminent.
Yeah, that's next Wednesday. And this is a big step for us because we're currently at TRL 4, Technology Readiness Level 4, and meaning we've been in the lab, we've been doing prototyping, all those things in the lab, and now it's time to get on some real industrial size equipment. So that'll get us to TRL 5 or 6. And then as a result of that, we'll have a large number of samples to sort of send out and let people play with and interact with, which is really exciting. Before, I only had the lab samples, so I would guard it with my life. And when I take it everywhere and people want to touch it, I'm like, can you please give it back to me, right? But now I'll have a lot for people to sort of.
And just for context, so a lab scale or a benchtop scale, we're talking about, I don't know, something it sounds like the size of a cell phone. But what you're talking about when you're going to this production run, what are we talking about? Refrigerator size of material? What's the
and
scale?
And what kind of material will it be?
Sure. So in the lab, we did sheets, and it was the size of maybe a sheet of paper, so a legal size sheet of paper. And we had 2 at different sort of formulations, but that's it. There was only 2. At the pilot run, will 10 times that amount,
Okay.
roughly. So 8 to 10 scale is what I'm thinking now. But it is a test. So we'll see on Wednesday what it turns out to be. Yeah.
So it's not going to be like you can't bring some carpet in here that we can like roll around in or anything like that. We're not there yet.
Well, so when you say
Small room.
when you say roll around,
I want to see if it's off-gassing.
well, I mean, I can bring you a little, and you can like smell it. I don't know,
or feel it, right?
You can definitely feel it. Yeah. Yeah.
What she really wants is she wants to give it to Yoshi, her cat, to roll around, and that's what this is
So
about.
I have done a lot of research about pets and chemicals in carpet, and just my family has lots of allergies, and carpet. It's also sometimes furniture.
Yes,
like has a lot of chemicals and things
PVC
like that.
as
And
well.
you think about your pets; they like
lick
are a lot closer to the carpet and furniture than you are.
Very sure.
Most of the day, so. It is near and dear to my heart, yes.
But the material, it's like you're saying carpet. It's the material you're making is not necessarily a fabric the way I think carpet is. Like this is more of a like hard flooring, right?
Well, it's flexible.
Okay, so
it would or could be used in carpet. So carpet, when you turn it over, there's the backing, and a lot of that is a sort of matrix looking, and it's a polymer that they put on the back. So it could be used in that, but also in a flexible sheeting if you want to. There's like pourable versions where you can just like pour it and just allow it to cure on its own or with like a little bit of, heat. So there's lots of different ways to implement it.
Okay. And so in some ways it's a component of like these, like carpet is a composite product of many things.
Yes.
And this is one of those components. And so it's a sample for people to get a sense of the properties, essentially.
Absolutely.
Right?
So at this point, it's just a substrate. And I share it with them and they say, yeah, we're looking for something like this to go in this, right? Or this would work well in this process because we're looking for something that is plant-based or non-fossil fuel-based, something like that. Yeah.
And if I remember a lot of the kind of technology barriers that said, why this is happening now or why we're able to do this now, is it as much driven by changes in chemistry? Is that where the innovation is? Or is it driven by demand you're seeing? Where's why now?
Yeah. Personally, chemistry is chemistry, right? I don't think that the chemistry it's based on an evolution of chemistry. I think really because of a transparency or at least an acknowledgement of studies and information that people have now, the demand has changed and the people that are supporting that demand recognize that there are alternatives. And so they can present those to the people. I think before it was sort of the lesser of evils, right? You're going to get carpet, no, but what's better than carpet? I guess I'll get luxury vinyl tile, right? And it's, carpet is synonymous with a lot of allergens and things like that because it traps things, right? But you move into a luxury vinyl tile, something that you can clean directly, but they still have very similar like chemical components, right? So I think it's just awareness now.
Yeah, and how does it get from the state that you're at? How does that end up in a product that I would buy as a indirect consumer?
Sure.
Yeah.
What we're doing is not necessarily manufacturing. We are developing the processes themselves and developing the processes for the technology, right? And then the goal is to really license that to the companies that would sort of plug and play those into their current practices or processes that they have so they can either meet ESG goals or they can meet the customer demand, like you mentioned. So basically what happened, we developed this out. So this beachhead that we're doing now, this initial product, say I sell it to the pair company, right? And then they put it in their new flooring line. It may be the substrate for their pourable polymer floor line that they put into hospitals, right? So it could be a component. It could be the entire formulation. It would depend. Right. So part of our offering is that not only is there the process, but there's also the technical know-how to customize that for what the customer would want.
Yeah. Is there a component of this where you need to like do pull through marketing, like elevating your brand to end customers, or does that matter? And I'm thinking of the canonical like Intel Inside, right?
Yeah, I think that it could get to that point, right? I think now is really about building trust, right? And being able to say, we have built a process, and the pair company uses it, and you can see what they've done. And then, steps after that would be like, oh yeah, the whatever process the fractal process, right? And that's what they put into this material or that material. It's absolutely a possibility. Yeah.
Where do you get your feedstock? Where do you get your materials?
Isn't that the secret sauce?
That is absolutely the secret sauce. I cannot tell you that. I am leaving. No, there's a few things.
Well, they're plant-based, so I'm going to go with
plants. Yeah. So there are a few materials. So one is definitely a secret sauce sort of material. It is part of our IP. But it's based off I'll just leave it at that. But then the other are paper and pulp sort of waste streams, a good deal of those. And then we've identified plant materials that can contribute certain characteristics. So some plants that contribute UV resistance, right? Wow. Or some that contribute antimicrobial activity, right? The process itself, the basic is a drying oil polymerization process, which just means drying oil is just like soybean oil or something that when it's exposed to air agitation, it hardens, right? So there's a proprietary blend of those drying oil that creates sort of the polymer matrix. And then we have these plants that we add to it to create those other things, sort of like make your own pizza, right?
Right.
Yeah.
You can tell Jhana's excited because she's backing away from the mic, but also just the hands
and my
are going
hands
up.
are doing things.
It's good. So one of the things you said was the company name.
Frakktal.
Yes. Where does that come from?
Yeah. It's really simple. And it's funny because people either always get it or like there's 50-50 people get it immediately and they're like, Frakktal, okay? Or they don't pronounce it at all. And I never anticipated somebody with a weird name. I would never create my company with a weird name for it to not be pronounced correctly, but it's Frakktal. That's it. Like the mathematical concept of Frakktal, which is just parts repeating themselves in the whole, right? So like broccoli, like lightning, like waves, all those things. And it really is just to represent that we are a part of something that's bigger than us.
So I thought you were going to go in a different direction and say that's part of like the polymerized
Absolutely not.
carbon. No,
that's
good
it's
too.
Really
just part of how we're, okay, good.
I hire you for marketing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's see.
We can talk about Houston.
We can talk about Houston.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
So you left, you came back.
A couple
right?
times, yeah.
What were the things that you found in the other programs that you really benefited from?
Ooh.
I want to go there first, and then like
money.
Okay.
I mean, that was a large part of it. We've been bootstrapped up until January of this year. So a lot of it was being able to retain the equity until we needed it for something else, right? Especially while we were figuring out market fit, validation, and not wanting to give up equity too soon. So getting grants were possible. So I will say we did do an accelerator here at the ION, Smart and Resilient Cities Accelerator, and that's where we got our first non-dilutive funding through that. But then the others, it was a lot of it was, but it was also sort of like hitting three things with one stone, right? So there is the capital aspect, but then there's also being able to connect with leaders in the field. So for instance, at Hudson Alpha, they are the preeminent plant and human sort of genotypic, phenotypic research facility in America. So if I want to know anything about plants, how to manipulate them to get the outcomes that I want, or if I just want to know why they do the things that they do, then I go there. So why wouldn't I want to pair, right, if I am building something that is based off plants? So it made a lot of sense. And honestly, in that case, it was more so that than the money, right? It was being able to have those experts sort of around to say, how about this? Or have you considered this? Or being able to potentially work with them on grants and things like that. At the Spark Accelerator in Tennessee, there was also the capital aspect, but there was also, it was at their research park, which has a materials sort of focus. So again, being able to be connected to people that are in the material space so they can kind of say, maybe you don't do that, right? So I mentioned that we pivoted there. Our mentors were kind of like, just because you should do a thing, just because you can do a thing doesn't mean you should, right? And so that was really hard to hear, but it was like, that's true, right? Just because I can make thermoplastic elasters for the automotive environment doesn't mean I should. Maybe I should focus on something that makes more sense. And so kind of a combination of things.
Yeah, and I'm thinking on the one hand, Houston and kind of the Gulf area has such strength in material production.
Yes.
But that doesn't necessarily mean the same as development or
it is different.
Research. Right?
Yeah, it is different. And for us, starting from scratch, right? This is not something that was developed in a university setting where it could be sort of transferred out directly, right? This was from an idea, right? Definitely an idea. So there were a lot more upfront steps. And so we needed the opportunity and space to be in a lab environment and work things out. So we went to the Mississippi Polymer Institute, and that's where we did our initial laboratory work. Yeah.
So now that you're back in Houston,
yes,
right?
Yes.
You've gone on your journey all over the country during the pandemic.
Yes.
I mean, you will one day you will look back on all of this and laugh.
Yes.
But we're glad you're back.
Yeah.
So what are the things that Houston does have? Like now that you've
the best
gathered
food
these
in the
tools.
world. I have. So when I'm sort of a snob about it, and I guess from always being from here, you don't really think about the fact that you can have any type of food that you want. You just have to I want that. And I know where to go. And I'm plant-based, vegan.
I was about to ask that.
Yeah.
I know.
And so that is still sort of difficult to eat in certain places, right? Not in Houston. And so I miss that when I go places. So I have my standards that I go to here. If you could see my Uber Eats, it's shameful, but it's the same places.
What are they? Please tell us.
Please tell us.
So my very, very, very favorite place, at least once a week, is Local Foods. So something there, probably a taco salad or something. You're like, yo. And it depends on if I'm being naughty. Maybe it's like a burger or something. But when I was sort of across the country, not necessarily in California, but in Huntsville and Tennessee, the options weren't there as much. Also, I wasn't able to do yoga, which kind of upset me a little. So I appreciate that Houston is diverse and there's just so many things to do, right? I love it. I mean, I always come back here. Yeah. Always. Yep.
And since you touched on it, we have to talk about where the best yoga joint is.
Yep. These are
best yoga
unpaid advertising.
The best yoga joint. I like that. So I'll say the yoga joint where I started and is still my favorite is on Kirby and South Boulevard. And it's Hot Yoga Houston, I think is the name of it. I don't even know the name. I can get there in my sleep though. And yeah, I started, I don't know, 12, 13 years ago there. And it's good. It just feels like home when you go in. You remember the smell and the people. It's good. Yeah.
So I love hot yoga. I started doing hot yoga when I lived in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
When it was cold.
Yeah.
I was there during a couple of the snowpocalypse years where it was just like very cold, and I am not from cold places. And so hot yoga like saved me.
Warmed you up from the inside.
Moved back to Texas. Hot yoga almost killed me because I think I like dehydrated and got a migraine, and then got on an airplane and was just like thought I was not going to make it.
Oh no.
But it is a different experience for me completely because it is also hot here.
It is.
Right? How should I combat that? Just drink a ton of water?
Electrolytes.
Yeah.
And also, so I don't, because I started at that, and it was at that location, that joint, and it was, when I went, it was very structured. So it was, we didn't drink water during class. So it was from what I understand, it was to teach you that throughout the day, you're supposed to be preparing for so you're hydrating throughout the day as opposed to like gulping it down while you're in class. So yeah, electrolytes, eat things with high water content. So salad, lettuce, things like that, things that don't dry you out. No salty stuff.
I'll be honest, I still have never done hot yoga.
We should all go.
There is a club of entrepreneurs who like to go to yoga together. So,
are there other yoga places in Houston that you recommend?
I recommend them all. I think everybody should frequent whatever feels best to them. I'm just a creature of habit where certain things are concerned, and so I don't want to be distracted by like looking and, oh, this is pretty and what, right? I want to go, this is my studio and I already know that's pretty. I've been here, I've seen it. So like I can focus. I also go to Hot Yoga Plus in Meyerland. It's like in the shopping center on the second floor. There's one in Sugarland. I've been to a couple of Black Swan like events.
Pop-ups?
Yeah. And I can't remember the last one I went to. It was the coolest thing ever. It was in like a warehouse, and it wasn't like trap yoga, but it was like popular music. It was to popular music, and it was like easily 1,000 people in there. Yeah, it was super cool. Yeah, anywhere feels safe. Yeah.
I've also done, so during the pandemic, a lot of yoga studios, and he like started going outside and doing it.
Yeah.
Which I think you imprint on the first yoga studio you go to. And
Absolutely.
that's like what it is in your head.
Yes.
And so that is the opposite of the place that I went to. But it was a pandemic. And so you're like excited to be around people, but you're outside, so you think you're safe. And what was funny was it was less hot than in the studio because you're outside.
Yeah.
I imagine when it was like full on summer, you would get the same temperature,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But I liked that a lot. So
Being outside. I don't know if
it was exceedingly distracting. And that's why like being in a dark-ish closed room like does help you close off. When there are cars driving around you, it's hard too. Birds, like all kinds of things. But
was it like in a park?
The studio had like a grassy area outside, and so they were just kind of like outside.
Yeah.
So to bring it back to technology and innovation a little bit.
Climate Tech Yoga. There's something
There's a
to
new
this,
podcast.
Right?
There's a new one right there. Are there some like hidden gems in the ecosystem that you found really helpful?
Hidden gems in the ecosystem. That's a good question. I think they're all hidden, which is probably the problem, right? Just because there's so many things around, and I learn more and more the more like I network. Yeah. Things that I hadn't heard of, and I'm like, I'm from here. Why don't I know that exists? So like Impact Hub Houston is a big one. And Greentown, I'm a member of Greentown. That's not really hidden, but it's there for the climate, people. The Ion, I still can't believe that people don't know what that is, right? And so I say the old Sears building, oh, that's a thing now? And I'm like, yeah, you should go there. They have a lot of cool things to do. Yeah, I think we could do better at like showcasing what's going on. Like we've put a lot of resources into building the ecosystem up, and I think maybe everybody doesn't know what's available.
Some of that is just a Houston challenge.
Yes.
Because we are such a big city.
Spread out.
Right? That you would be surprised the things people don't know, right? And you're like, the Ion is a beautiful, huge building that has been under construction for a long time, like during the pandemic, right?
Yep.
But like you ask people, who's the mayor? Right? Like there are things that people don't know. And like if you live in a different part of town,
right.
you might not have known the Sears.
Yes. Very true.
So
very
like,
true.
that is a challenge of Houston for anything
I agree.
new, is that you kind of like you always have to hustle, right? You are always like selling, even though you're like, hey, I've been here a year, I've been here 2 years, I've been here 5 years.
Yeah.
You're still talking to people for the first time.
Yes.
Where in a smaller, either a geographically smaller place or maybe just a smaller population, right? You have more repeats. People coming in over and over again.
I agree. And also, not even just smaller. I think it's also concentration, right? Because we like our space, right? And so we're all over. And so I live.
You mentioned Meyerland, right? So you've got, that's a ways.
Yeah, I don't live close to Meyerland, right? And so I live in 3rd Ward. And so that's pretty central, right? But so I would pass the Sears building, to your point, in the old Fiesta all the time. But if you're talking about something on even this facility like the Cannon, like I don't come out here. This is past 610. I don't do that. I don't do that. Yeah, it's very true.
So I have another question. You mentioned for the climate folk, do you consider yourself a climate tech startup?
Yes. I don't know why it took me so long to answer that. Yes.
Well, just because, I mean, everybody has a different journey. And so sometimes some people start out with like a climate mission and some people discover the climate mission along the way.
Yeah.
And I can see your technology. You could sell your product to a lot of people and it not really, like, climate doesn't have to be the main selling point, right?
Yeah.
You've got a health impact. You've got maybe like a supply chain impact. Like you've got a lot of different selling points.
Yeah, but so I think that the health impact and the climate impact, you can't really separate them, right? And so, did I answer that correctly?
That makes me happy.
So one of the reasons that the built environment is really important for us to talk about, not only we don't talk about materials as often as we talk about like energy products and things, transportation, things like that. Because these are the spaces that we inhabit, we spend the most of our time, right? Americans spend roughly 90% of their time indoors. So that means you're interacting with this stuff all the time. And it's worse for communities that are already vulnerable, right? So think affordable housing. The materials that they use for projects like this tend to be of a lower grade. They degrade faster, but then they're also not repairable. So that means, a year, 2 years into interacting with them, they've already started to impact you negatively, right? And that if you are in a vulnerable community, if that could mean that you don't have the access to rip out your entire, right, and start all over again, right? So to me, I think they're interlinked, and that's one of the reasons why we positioned ourselves that way. It's not something that you can necessarily escape from, and it's also back to our origin story, right? I wanted, aside from me thinking about how it was going to impact him, I was thinking what happens to it when he throws it away, right? So I think those two things just kind of always go together, at least in my mind.
So buildings, when you talk about climate and emissions, like rarely do people want to talk about buildings. It's not as exciting, right?
Cars are very exciting.
Yeah, cars, people get power, electricity, people get
wind.
Right. Thinking about replacing your carpet and your windows. Like nobody ever wanted to talk about weatherization.
No.
Until we had all of these
Right.
freezes. And
It's
now
not
people
sexy.
are like, oh, windows matter, right?
They do.
Heat pumps. That's another one that
Yep.
really no one ever wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
A little bit more popular now because of the IRA, because there's
Yes.
a big incentive.
Yes.
So there are lots of incentives also for buildings.
Yes.
Are you thinking about that yet?
Mm.
Or is it something that you're seeing kind of in your space in the industry?
Like, are your customers starting to leverage that?
Investors, are they?
Yeah. It's funny. Even in buildings, it hasn't really been materials. Even in buildings, it's electrification, other sort of energy things, like enclosing spaces, retrofitting buildings, things like that. It's not, a lot of the talk is not about the materials that we use when we are constructing buildings or we are redoing buildings, things like that. So it's important, I think, for myself and other founders in that sort of space to sort of bring the awareness to sort of like the gap there, right? This is important. It should be important to you, but it's important to all of us, right? How these things are coming across, especially as IRA, right? All this money is being allocated to help us to move forward, that we make sure that we include things that are important, like materials.
Well, and I think your product, once you got to manufacturing, right, would qualify because it's decarbonizing a material, right? So there's opportunity there. So like once you hit that point, they have serious money and they're looking for folks like you. So I think that's exciting.
And that incentive includes like refurbishing or setting up the factory to allow, implementing your material, right? So there's a lot of points where the IRA is going to affect your commercialization in terms of needing less money.
Yes.
Which is good for everyone else.
Yeah. The IRA is a good thing.
Yeah. When we think about the climate goals we might have within materials, do you think like it's not like all materials have ever been invented, right? Like, but do we have the technology we need to get to our climate goals? Or where do you see the white spaces where, because you obviously chose to do, PVC replacement with the flexible and soft kind of material, but what else is missing still in the world, the ginormous world of plastic?
Yeah. I'm trying to remember the quote. It's like, of all of the biological possibilities that are out there, we've discovered like a single digit percentage of those things, right? So think about all the things that we could create or that will be created, and we've created 2% of those things, right? I think as we are more honest and transparent about challenges that we've had and what we are looking to do, especially as 2030 and 2050 get closer, I think we're going to be more industry-wide, entrepreneur-wide, taking more risks on what we are looking to create, right? And what people, to your point, you brought up investors, what people are willing to back, right? Because it's 2023, right? 7 years is not a long time, right? So there are going to have to be some things that come along pretty quickly that maybe have not even been invented yet, right? So, and I think a good deal of them haven't been invented yet.
So random question that I just thought of.
Yeah.
The former city person brain, is there a permitting factor that your material would have to go through, or like testing to be approved? So you mentioned hospitals, like hospital flooring. Is there something that has to go through so that manufacturers would be allowed to use your product?
Like a standard?
Yeah. So there's a standard. There's a ASTM, if you've heard of that. There's they have standards for everything. They have standards for resilient flooring, which is what that's called. And then there's specific sort of like antimicrobial tests and things like that for specific use cases for hospitals and things like that, or schools. They have different standards.
I have such a silly question. Like, when they say antimicrobial, do they like scrape microbes onto it and see if they live? Like, how does that? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. There's going to be a standard. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Is it hard within the industry to bring a new product? And that can be like actually passing the standard, right? So you get the stamp.
Yeah.
But then even though you have a stamp, there's often hesitancy to be the first
Sure.
first one. This is the first hospital that has a new product,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The concrete example, right? There's so much advancement in concrete, but there's always going to be hesitancy to be the first person who builds that first building, right?
Or that first bridge.
Right.
Mhm.
And so how do you think about that?
Yeah. So I think some of that is covered in like pilots, right?
Mhm.
You're able to mitigate some of the risks and hesitancy. And then our goal anyway, or our strategy is to sort of build up, right? So initial pilot, maybe smaller scale, sort of a safer bet, and then get riskier and riskier and riskier. And then as you show that growth and being able to meet those targets and metrics, you sort of prove to people that you're able to do things. And when you fail, that you were able to come back around and figure out why and that kind of thing. And at the end of the day, again, to your point, some of these things are very ambitious. And I don't think that the goal is necessarily perfection in the first try. It's, okay, we set up a strategy or plan to get to it, and then we met those things, and how do we need to work around?
Yeah.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah, so I think unfortunately we're running a little short on time. As much as I enjoyed talking about this, the most important question we're going to ask today is if there's a prehistoric or extinct flora fauna you would bring back, tell us what it is and why.
I don't think I would bring anything back, just because I think that's irresponsible. But brontosaurus that's like childhood dream, is to like pet a brontosaurus.
So is that from The Land Before Time or from Jurassic Park?
Yes,
Like this is the callback here.
Oh my gosh. I don't think if I'm trying to remember their names. I remember watching that movie.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't remember their names, but it was
That is Littlefoot's the
Littlefoot,
brontosaurus.
yeah.
Is it?
Yes.
My brain did a little sparkle,
One
so
of the-
maybe that
one
was-
of the saddest movies of all time, and then they made like 7 of them.
Yes.
They did make quite a few.
And did we watch all of them? Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we did.
What kids don't like dinosaurs?
I know. Anyway,
Yeah.
but there's a whole weird story about how bringing back prehistoric and extinct animals plays into climate tech. So keep that on your radar
Yeah.
for things.
Pet the brontosaurus.
Yep.
That's the goal in life.
Yep.
It is.
But you also said just because you could doesn't mean that you should, which we learned from Jurassic Park.
Yes,
is also like
which is the other
an
movie.
important.
Yes.
You got to keep it in the balance, right?
Yes, I never forget that.
So when we think about, where we're going for the next year, what is something that our audience here could do to help you, support you in your goals?
Help me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk about materials more.
Yeah.
When you are thinking about your place of residence, or ask what things are made of. And when they tell you, say, is there something else? Right? Because what they're typically offering you is going to be made of PVC, right? And tell them you don't want PVC, and watch them squirm a little bit, right? And I think we just need to start those conversations. Yeah.
Did you do this in your home?
My home is 80 years old, roughly, right? So I have wood floors, original wood.
Nice.
So that is not big there. I should, though, there are other things there that may have PVC, and I hadn't even thought. I'm going to do that when I go home.
And
Darn it.
And if people want to learn more, where should they find out about your work?
We have a website, Frakktal, 2 Ks.
Spell it out for us, please.
FRAKKTAL.
Okay.
Yeah.
.com.
.com.
And I'll put it in the show notes.
Yes. I'm on LinkedIn.
Okay. And they can find you on LinkedIn.
Yep.
Good.
Well, excited. I can't wait until I can say I want my fractal floor.
Yes. I like the way that sounds.
I'm going to ask him to say, does this have fractal flooring?
Oh, yes. I love it.
And
then we're going to go to yoga.
Side eye if it does not.
Side eye. Yes.
Great.
All right. Thanks.
Cool.
Thank you.